Today we have Secretary of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. It's Pavel Ilin. He's a philosopher, a culture maker. He's a musician, a baker, and an aspiring software engineer. Hello, Pavel. How are you? It's so nice to have you on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steele. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you because, we have Gennady on, and, Gennadi's fun, but I think you've got the better job. You get to sit in the secretary role and let Gennady take all the hard work, and then, put your voice in, and your voice is very loud. So I think you've got the better job, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Like all the media pressures on Gennady, I'm just sitting on background and doing backend.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to go through a little bit about who you are, what inspired you to do what you're doing, and then what you've done, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about the issues. So, firstly, let's talk a little bit about your childhood, whatever you want to talk about in relation to how that has put you onto this path, how it's inspired you, whether you read sci-fi or your parents pushed you into science or you enjoyed science, or what was the mechanisms involved in pushing you onto this path of life extension, transhumanism, longevity, super longevity, AI, all the cool stuff that we like to talk about here on Dead Nation.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting path. I was grown in the south of Russia. It's very conservative and religious region, and I don't really like to live there. And I don't know how I managed to develop this scientific mindset, but I did it, and I was always interested in future and in technologies and in the space, like in the galaxies and stars, and I was fascinated about the size of the universe. It's just it was my refuge from the terrible social environment. I was thinking about stars and galaxies. I just hide there. So I think that's the first. It's the first point of my development. Second, which led me to life extension and transhumanism. I met with death in really early ages. Like all my grandfathers died, and I went to the funerals like several times. I don't know, like 5 times, and then my mom passed away. And I was wondering that, hey, this is what's going to happen to me. And to be honest, I wasn't really happy realizing that. And at that time I was not religious, and I thought we should do something about it. I don't really want to vanish. I don't want to disappear. And that's what led me to the transhumanism. And when I was 19 years old, I read. I was like in a philosophical search. Like, I was wondering about life. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we here? What's going on around? And I don't know how, but I just read the FAQ of transhumanism. And it was strange in some internet, in some web store. And I was so fascinated. Oh, somebody also think about overcoming death and increasing our abilities, our powers. And then I just start Googling what transhumanism is, start reading more about it. And I found out that there is transhumanists in Russia, and there's transhumanist movement. And I contact them, and it was in November 2005. I contact them, and I became a member of the movement. I started helping with a website administration, and we start some dialogues with regular people in online forums. And then I just moved to Moscow to join the movement after maybe half a year. And and in Moscow I just keep participating in the movement. That's funny. when I left Russia, I was executive secretary of Russian Transhumanist Movement, and when I'm in US, I become a secretary of US Transhumanist Party. So it's really, I think the destiny is have a sense of humor.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's you've moved from one big movement to another, and you know it's kind of interesting because you know Russia, it's not where it all began, but I mean Russia and transhumanism has a really deep interlocked history. Absolutely. You know Dmitry Iskov knew this very well, and he launched Russia 2045, and it was received very well. But you know, he didn't when he launched Russia 2045, he didn't want to embark that on as a journey as a Russian only adventure. He planned to grow it out into world and global 2045 fairly quickly within a few years, you know. So it's interesting, but it seems like for some reason it doesn't, you know, these movements that have been started by these billionaires, millionaires, and sometimes political classes never seem to gain much traction, because I think the political classes they rely on popular movements, and I mean it's not sexy, and no one really wants to, you know, it's not very nationalist. It's, you know, there's not much flag waving, so people don't really get energized.
There's no much drama, no violence, no big fancy picture you can sell.
Exactly, and so there doesn't gain much political traction. So the political people drop out. The money side, you know, it costs a lot, and then a lot of people make a lot of money on the side. So you end up funding other people's wealth. So it's not that much fun, and I think what Gennady is doing is the absolute best. You know how they've refrained from taking in money. They're building up networks. They're building up a global network. You know, they're premised with a very big goal, and you do need a very big goal to capture the White House, and eventually they will be able to do that. But for now, it's just there as an idea. You know, we'll take the White House, but we've got to go through all the learning curves. So you know, I respect that, and I like that idea that what you've done. I'm rambling because we should go back to what you talked about. So in your history, in your childhood, you said you escaped your social situation, and you escaped among the stars. I found I did that as well. I found that this is a good way to release a lot of stress and a lot of you know, the notion of what your circumstances
it's called inner immigration. When you immigrate inside some images of the future or past, some inner world.
When you did it, did you envision yourself building and being a part of that future, or were you kind of like a time traveler where you wanted to just time travel to that future and participate in that future?
At the moment, I didn't consider myself as a builder of that future or whatever it is. I was just hiding there and imagine some picture of the future. I was just participant. I didn't thought that I will have a chance and I will have ability and have enough, I don't know, brains to do something about the build in the future.
Because
so yeah, it was just a refuge.
Yeah, because it's ended up, ironically, it's ended up that you're a big part of building that future, in that technological future, you know, and it's interesting. You did a little video, just staying on this theme. You did a little video, why I'm transhuman, for the Transhumanist Party, and I remember you used a little quote in there. You said cultural operating system. You know, that, and I found this interesting because, you know, in America, America is very freedom based. It's a very much, they don't think they have a culture. In the 21st century and the latter half of the 20th century, they had a culture, and that culture was, for example, anything that wasn't the USSR, that was American, so that became consumer-based capitalism. That was part of their culture. And in the modern day, it's flag waving, it's nationalism, it's defending what values are American, which include freedom.
Oh, I should say it's very diverse. It's not only a nationalism and flag. There's lots of different flags. It's very diverse culture, very diverse process. At least it's how I see it from New York.
Yeah, yeah, and you're in the heart of the empire right there in New York, or wherever you are. But yeah, well, so this cultural operating system, I just wanted to take this notion out because you've seen the USSR, and because the thing about the USSR,
Actually, I didn't. Like I was born in 1986, so I
oh,
didn't really saw USSR.
all right, well, you know a lot about it, and the thing is with those guys, that because they had a lot of the top scientists. They had the top scientists. The country didn't go anywhere, but it was orientated, and that they had a lot of the top scientists. I wanted to know your thoughts on that. How did that happen? How did that country produce that many top scientists? Do you know?
Well, I think first it was a technocratic country and secular, not the secular, but religiously atheistic. And the only way of progress the USSR saw its progress through technology, through development technology, and make the technology, and as technology like hardware technology and as well as software technology, and make this technology available to everyone. For example, education in USSR was free, and the government was encouraged people even from the villages to go to universities for free, and well, everything was kind of free. Government was encouraged the population to educate itself and to get a jobs in engineering and I don't know, aircraft, spacecrafts, engineering. So it was really technocratic culture. So I think that's why. And yes, and the government tries. I think it failed, but it tries to make decisions based on a scientific facts, based on based approaches. But as we know, it failed to do that. But at least they tried to do that.
And is there any lessons that the West can learn from this approach, this cultural approach of an atheistic, technocratic society? Because it fell over, you know, as we said. But do you think there's a lesson in there? Because yeah, I know you said okay, you weren't involved in the USSR as it was, but you talk about this cultural operating system, and you've seen both. Sort of seen both cultural operating systems and how they differ, and I'm wondering from your perspective, you know, if we can learn anything from the two different operating systems to optimize either system.
I think we can learn cooperation, but for example, if we look at the history of the invention of internet, and we actually can learn not from the USSR, not from Soviets, but from US, how cooperation is better in some points, in some cases better than competition. Like it was several cases that brilliant Soviet scientists proposed to the government some version of the internet to connect all the factories, all the country, but the government was. The bureaucrats who work in the government, they were not interested to like automate the process, because the bureaucrats would lose their jobs and they would be obsolete. And like I think it was 3 times when the different scientists, different generations of scientists proposed some sort of some version of the internet, and there was like nobody listened to them. And in US, we see how the cooperation between scientists create this free and open source and decentralized network, which we enjoy now. So I'm not sure we can learn something from USSR. because we can learn striving to education. Because in the early Soviet Republic, it was a very was one of the first goal to increase literacy to 100%. It was achieved, but I think it was achieved because of the very centralized government and just forcing people to educate. So it's hard to learn something from that.
Because if you think about it, I mean, they did do some advances. I mean, they were the first to launch Sputnik. I mean, they put the rocketry side they did very well in, and they did some other very cool advances. Nuclear technology. They did some radio technology very very well. Some weapons, some aircraft. I mean, they started to fall over, but they did have a semblance of some sort of society which was arguably progressing faster than the US at some stage, and relative to the world, I guess faster than some countries. But I was just wondering, from your perspective, if there was something we can learn to optimize the two different systems. But that's really interesting.
Oh, for example, we can learn how to we can take something from the past. For example, how Soviet government took the cosmism culture, cosmism ideas, and implement in a Soviet space program. So it was a cosmist. They was Christians, but they were thinking about space exploration and immortality, and yes, and actually they was thinking about the cryonics. For example, after Lenin dies, there was big discussion among the cosmists within a communist party, like what should we do with the body? Should we freeze it, or should we keep it in this chemical mixture? And they decided to keep it in chemicals because there was no source of liquid nitrogen, and the electricity wasn't stable in Moscow at that time. So they decided to preserve it in the chemicals. So we can learn how to learn from the past, and took some great ideas from the past, peel these ideas from religious cover, and took the insights and implemented in actual projects.
So I think it was 2005 you joined the Russian transhumanist movement, right? 2005.
That's correct.
So this is a civil society, the largest in Eurasia, and I was so by 2005, Russia has gone through a lot of changes. What was the acceptance? Is the movement well accepted, or was it harassed? Like, for example, Putin nowadays, he harasses Jehovah's Witnesses. He doesn't like those guys. But was the Russian transhumanist movement at that time well accepted, or off the radar, or?
I think as I feel we were off the radar. Like, society didn't accept it. It was the reaction. If you just talk about transhumanism on the street with the random people, reaction could be very aggressive. But the government don't really care, because there was, I don't know, 100 transhumanists in the country, so there was nothing, no big movement, so government don't care at the time. But society was very conservative, and it was really hard to push ideas forward, to insert ideas into the culture.
Yeah, and that movement started off a great cascade of great ideas: futurology, gerontology, medicine, cryonics, intelligence application, transferring of human consciousness to neurobiological carriers, nanotechnology, nanomedicine, brain-computer interfaces, artificial organs, bodies, in advanced genome studies, aging making. Because you're big. I mean, all of these are great ideas. And something you mentioned cryonics. Why cryonics? Are you a believer in Ray Kurzweil's singularity?
Am I what? Believe?
A believer, yeah. Do you subscribe to the theory of Ray Kurzweil's 2045 positive singularity?
Well, I'm not a believer, but I accept that there's possibility of the technological singularity. We don't know when exactly. Like rational way to think about it, it could happen between like 10 and 100 years, but we don't really. It's impossible to predict that it could happen exactly in 2045. So, but I think the concept of technological singularity is real, and it's should happen at some point. I think in this century, but it depends on when we develop real AGI.
Yeah, and would cryonics, because you're big into cryonics, you were with the Cryonics Institute or something, and would cryonics, if somebody went into cryonics, would that mean that they would be released almost at the point of the technological singularity, because that's when medicine would advance to fix their ailment?
I think after.
After?
Yeah, I think most of the patients which preserve now, they would need nanotechnology to restore their body. I don't think they, because most of the patients not preserved well, most of the patients not go through petrification and perfusion process, so the damage of the cells is very high, I think. So most of the people should wait till the artificial intelligence and nanotechnology can just rebuild the body by atom. And yes, but yeah, I think some people who preserve well, especially recent patients, they could be restored before singularity.
And why do you like the idea of cryonics? What's attractive to you about cryonics? Why did you get involved with cryonics?
Well, it's a backup for me. It's a backup plan. I personally really enjoy my life, and I don't have any plans to, stop it. But as some persons say that life we're not only mortal, but we're also unexpectedly mortal. So we can, yes, I know that I have enough time to survive till probably other 50 years. But planes could fall down, bricks could fall down, whatever could happen. So for me, it's a good plan, good backup plan. At least a better plan than being buried and being fed to the worms or being burned and turned to the ashes.
Yeah, and that was with Cryorus. Is there anything you want to talk about to do with Cryorus, the Cryonics institution or laboratory organization, a company that you worked for?
Well, Cryos, yes, it was really great. I mean, it is still very great. It is one of the major projects of the Russian transhumanist movement, and currently there's 89 patients, both antibodies and neural patients, and yeah, when I just moved to Moscow, it was just only the Cryos was working only volunteers. I was doing all kind of jobs, from the painting the walls to organize the media trip for Discovery Channel. So yes, it was not only me, but a lot of people. Yes, I also was involved in like actual cryogenic, actual procedures like surgeries when they remove all the blood and replace it with a perfusion liquid. So yeah, it was great. Also, Cryos did such a great job in promoting the and transhumanism and cryonics. So now, if you talk now in Russia, if you talk to someone just on the street and you talk about transhumanism, at least you would hear the response like, "Oh, it's probably this crazy guys who froze someone, right?" So the people aware about that it's around, it's there. So I think Frères and Russian transhumanist movement and also 2045, they both did a really great job in promoting the ideas of transhumanism and spreading awareness about the and life extension and upgrade and cryonics.
That's really interesting because I had a look at the website and I noticed they do pets and animals as well. And sorry, yeah, you.
Oh yeah, it's one of the. I think it's like a side service, but I think now it become more like bigger and bigger because people attach to their pets and they consider them not just a toys but as a member of the families, and they want to preserve them so they can live with them in the future, and maybe in the future we can uplift these pets to the to the human level intelligence and can talk to them and live with them. They can be our friends on the higher existential level.
Yeah, like in those animated movies where the pets all talk in real life. Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to talk to you though. I wanted to ask you because I found myself thinking about this when I was looking through that website, and then I saw the gallery, and I confirmed that I was thinking about that. You guys were thinking about this as well, but when I saw it, I started to think of how people immortalized themselves before in a cryonic-like state, and I started to think of the pyramids, for example. A lot of people say that the pyramids were a tomb, and and this tomb was a portal to the afterlife, and that was immortality. And you had a pyramid for the king, and a pyramid for the queen, and some pyramids for the pets. And I wanted to ask you: is this just a modern day pyramid scheme? Not like a scam, but like a pyramid scheme. You know what I mean? Something that it doesn't quite make sense. But it's in the jest of immortality in that way.
Well, I think you're right about that. I think for example, ancient Egypt culture was like a first attempt, not the first attempt, but one of the attempts to achieve immortality. I think whole the culture it's emerged as the process of looking for a way to avoid death, to overcome death. For example, first literature monument we know, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's about the adventure of journey of looking for immortality. And so back to the terms, ancient Egypt process of the dying and then storing the bodies in the tombs and preparing the bodies for the internal process, internal journey. It's kind of cryonics for ancient Egypt, but with the available technology and available understanding of the world and how the consciousness works, how the body works. And I think cryonics, it's not exactly, but pretty same practice, but with a better understanding and more deep and more wide understanding of the world, consciousness, like what we are saving, what we are going to restore, and how it's working when it's alive. So I think we have a better odds than ancient Egypt pharaohs who were stored and still in museums. But yeah, I think it's pretty much it's have a same we have a kind of same values with the stones. We have a different technologies.
Yeah. Yeah, because I saw then I looked into the gallery and I saw there was a lady next to one of these mummies, and I thought, they like that like that was what I was thinking as well, and I was very impressed by that, because then I realized that that people understood the historical mirroring, and they also understood that it's technological difference. It's not a it's awful to say, but it's not a confirmed. It might be just as bad. It might work just as well as the pyramids, but it's the best attempt we have at achieving its stated goal.
Yeah, I think it's important to show the people that show to the public that transhumanism and cryonics and immortalism, it's nothing new in it. It's a very organic part of the culture. We are afraid of death, and we don't want to die. And through all the culture, through all the history of the culture, different cultures looking for the ways of achieving immortality. All the religion, it's about immortality. It's in different ways, but it's Christianity or Hinduism, all the any religion. It's about the achieving immortality, but somewhere else, but achieving the results of immortality.
Yeah,
I think it's important. I think it's important to show that transhumanism is very organic part of the culture.
absolutely, and it's something that people participate in, whether or not they know it or not. That's the other point, is that a lot of people participate in this process and they don't even know that, and they don't accept that. Something that's a hindrance to immortality, something that's preventing us from living longer, even in this day and age of modern medicine, good nutritious food, availability of food, etc., is aging, deterioration of cells, senescence, other things. Is aging a disease?
It is. Of course, aging is a disease because it's the aging of it's lead to all the diseases. All this disintegration of our bodies leads to failure of one of the organs, or failure of the blood vessels. So aging should be considered as a disease, and it's important to consider it as a disease because while we not consider it like this, we not really do anything to cure it. Yes, we try to cure cancer, and we did a great progress to do it, to cure it, and we did a great progress to cure all the diseases which wiped out the like 8% of the population of the Europe before. And I think it's important to consider something as a problem in order to solve this problem. So yes, back to the original question, it is a disease, and it should be considered as a disease, and it should be worked on as a disease in order to cure it.
Yeah. So a lot of diseases that they're trying to cure are linked to aging. They happen as a result of aging, and so if you declare aging as a disease, then by default, a lot of the diseases that they're trying to cure will have a better chance of being cured. That's the science, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
So you're in the prevention. You're in the prevention category. You want to prevent a lot of the diseases from occurring, rather than putting a band-aid over the specific diseases that pop up.
Well, I think it's the same. I use the same methodology as with cryonics. I want to prevent my dying before I die, so I don't have to freeze my brain into the liquid nitrogen and then have a not 100% chances of restoration exactly version of me. So better to prevent something than fix and restore and cure.
So you took part in an aging diagram. You were an engineer in an aging diagram schematic. I had a look over the schematic. It was very, very detailed. It scared me because I saw all the red lines.
Scares me too.
Yeah. So tell us about that experience of helping to design that, because that's a very comprehensive schematic.
Yes, we were working with a gerontologist from different Russian institution, and the problem of gerontologists that they think that everything connect with everything, and they don't tell you that they said, oh no, it's too complex. Everything's connected with everything. We don't know. So my job was to the lead gerontologist to the specific path of some chemical reaction, for example. I don't remember. I don't have exact examples of this like reactions, but I have to ask gerontologist. Okay, we have event A, then we have process like B, and it leads to event C. Is this correct? Is this not correct? Do we have any like events F and D around, or like what's going on? And it was more like a words game, more communication work than scientific work, more communication and then visualization work. So yeah, and I think it's very important to visualize the process and show the people that we understand aging at least some point, that it's not some mystery process we don't know anything about. At least we understand some part of it, and we will keep growing. We keep grow out our understanding of this process, and it helped to like raise the funding for the research and spread awareness about aging, and spread the idea that aging is theoretically cured, that we not necessarily doomed.
Yeah, and I'd like to. Do you have any ethical concerns at all with some of the common arguments, living forever, overpopulation, resource overuse, dictators living forever, families marrying their great grandchildren, etc. Have you got any? Do you worry about any of that stuff?
Yeah, overpopulation is very common argument against life extension, but as we can see with the growing of access to education, the birth rate is decline, and we have so much space. And for example, I heard that Gennady was talking about the abundance of space in Nevada. I just visited Wisconsin, and there's so much empty space, and there's so much resources, so much corn you can grow to feed people. So I don't believe that overpopulation is a big problem, because first, when we get smarter, we reproduce less, and we getting smarter. Whole world getting smarter. And yes, a lot of people live in urban areas, and they consider other world kind of like their environment. It's like if you live in Manhattan, you can feel, oh yes, the overpopulation here is around, and we don't have any space for like two more people. Plus, I think it's very unethical to think about overpopulation, because you consider other people like unwanted, and like it's extra people. Like we have this 7 billions, like this enough, and if we have 100 more million, this is people they not welcome in the family of humanity. And I think it's wrong to think about the human life. Every human life is sacred, and there couldn't be more people than. I'm sorry. Every human life is sacred, and we should value human life as a ultimate value.
Yeah. So there's not. You shouldn't place these contextual ideas of, these people aren't valued because we've hit some arbitrary number.
Because they took our resources. Like, it's not only it's all, and I think it's a zero-sum game mentality. And it's like when we have more people, we have more brains, we have more power, we have more resources to produce more resources. We have more people to think about how to solve the problem. We have more people to build something to solve the problems. So, and plus we have not only Earth, we have all the space around. Russian cosmist was concerned with our population, and that's why the follower of the Nikolai Fedorov, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, was developing this theoretical and practical theories and models of the space engines and the models of the space colonies in order to repopulate the Earth, repopulate all the people who we will resurrect from the dead. So there's plenty of space, plenty of resources. We just need to keep working, and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, and we'll get smarter and more efficient at distributing those resources and come up with more theoretical concepts, as you've already explained greatly. And Nikolai Fedorov, is a great hero, a great someone I greatly admire. So that's really cool. So something else you've been involved in is something called the Pirate Party, the Pirate Church Party.
Russian Pirate Church.
Yeah. What's that? Are you stealing people's ships or something?
We found Pirate Church in order to struggle for freedom of information and freedom of communication, and the trigger for founding Russian Pirate Church was Pussy Riot law, if you know about that. After the Pussy Riot art group was arrested and prosecuted, the Russian parliament put in place law for protect, how they call it, law against insulting feelings of believers. And we think, okay, we have a legal grounds to protect our rights for freedom of information and exchange of information. And we found the church. Church was religious group, was registered by some Russian department of the something, and so it became official religious group. And the main value we pursued with the church is freedom of information, and especially scientific information. Like, we don't really care about downloading the movie from a torrents, but we care about, for example, paywalls between the scientists and publication in scientific journals. And this is terrible, because at least in Russia, 90%, 95% of the all the scientific discoveries, all the scientific work funded by the government, by the taxpayers, and it's this information, this publication, hiding between paywalls from the public, and this is totally wrong. And plus we will try to resist try to protect the freedom of speech, because as you know, in Russia, it's very limited. Especially if you don't like how the government works, if you like to criticize the government, your liberty of the free speech is really limited. And you actually now you can be put in a prison, and you could have the criminal charges if you express non-respect to the government. So there was two main reasons: freedom of information and mainly scientific information, and protect the freedom of speech.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have that same problem here in the West about this whole this wall, this giant dividing line between the scientific data and research and the normal consumer. And the point is that these publishers are just that. They're just simply publishers. They don't even create the work.
Exactly.
So they're making millions and millions and millions off public money and or privately they have to get published anyway. So as a citizen, there's not a reasonable rate. I can't just go onto Google Scholar and find some publisher and access their information at a reasonable rate. The only way I can really access that is if I go into a ton of debt and get into a big group like a university, where the university with public money can help to subsidize and access some of those scholarly journals. It's disgusting. It really is. And they're also the officiators of what is real information. You understand what I mean? If it's not published by them, it's not real information. So you can't have a website like WikiLeaks or something or Pirate Church, that publishes this information, and that somehow be, information that's, useful in the domain because you didn't pay for it. It stifles scientific growth. It's economically rude, and it's commercially inefficient.
And it slowed down the progress, because scientists need to find a way around these paywalls, because most scientists can't pay out of pocket for this, and they have to go to universities, so they have to go to some pirate pay places when they can find this information, and it slowed down the progress. It's terrible.
And the thing is, we live in the era now, in the 21st century, of convergence. So all the sciences, technologies, everything is converging to a single point. So, if you want to talk about finance, you have to talk about the internet. If you want to talk about biotech, you have to talk about space. It's like everything, all the subjects are starting to come into a singular point. And the thing is, if you go to a university and you apply for a subject and you unlock those journals within that subject, you might actually need to go across to the bio part, or the medical, or this part or that part of the university, and read their stuff, because your stuff relates to their work. Your work is all interrelated nowadays. That's where we're heading. It's not, there's no more siloing. That's a very 19th, 18th century, because when you were discovering economics, okay, that's fine. All the economists can argue with each other about economics, and that was a pillar. And that was okay, but now economics isn't just about economics and graphs and tables. It's about a whole range of things, or so is finance. It's about a whole range of things. So when they wall these things up, they're stopping and slowing down that convergence. They're slowing down the fact that everybody's spiraling towards a single point.
Exactly. This categorization is completely obsolete, and you're right that science becomes so complex and so converged. So you can't work on your own on some scientific problem. You need to work with a team from different departments, different and look at the problem from different perspectives. And yes, and you have access only to one category, and other guy have access to only to one category, and don't have access to your category. And yes, it's create a big mess and slow down this process. So
Yeah,
it's completely irrational. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but I don't know why we still keep them to parasite on a.
Yeah, it's a cross discipline world now, and these guys are profiting from slowing down scientific progress. And the other thing is, I don't want to see any scientist go to jail for trying to do science because they're not a millionaire and they can't afford to access this stuff. That would be really, really bad. And so well done on this Pirate Party thing. There's a lot of other
Pirate Church.
Yeah. Pirate Party is here in Australia. That's the equivalent.
We also have a Pirate Party in Russia. They now involved in a Moscow parliament elections, so they also there. They also try to do some work.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think it founded in Sweden or Norway or something, right? The Pirate Party.
Yeah, somewhere in Scandinavia.
Yeah. They're doing a lot of good work, and they're the people who are keeping information fair, because as we know, even the greatest adherent of the government should be skeptical of the government. The government is not always our friend, and so so these people, at least it's one way to keep the government honest. And it's funny with a WikiLeaks or something like that, they'll release 10,000 pages of something, and in the first comment underneath any news article about it, the first comment is always someone who's read every single page of that, and they know what happened. You know what I mean? These people, it's funny. I went on there, I read it all. I know I read all 10,000 pages in the last 5 minutes. But that's not the point. We know that journalists and organizations.
Yes, media really likes sensations and drama, and they really good at the writing the really catchy and catchy highlights.
Yeah,
and that titles.
Yeah, it's really good. So is there anything else you want to tell us about your life, your experience, your journey? Anything you want to tell us, because it's such an interesting journey, and and you're the secretary of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, which is the largest party on the planet. So that's really, really cool, and that's an esteemed position. So, anything you want, just tell us anything you want.
Well, I can tell you about UBI, why I become so pro UBI. When I was in Russia, I was thinking about UBI. Yes, it's a nice idea. Yes, it should be. Yeah, it's rational. It's great. But I was thinking about this on the side. It's great, but I don't want to think about that now. When I moved to the US, I was working in the jobs for minimum wage, and I realized that we so desperately need UBI to release people from these meaningless minimum wage jobs. And I don't say that work in bakery is like bad work or something, but after 12 hours of rolling croissants, when you come back home, you don't want to think about your life, your strategy, plan. You don't want to do planning. You just want to fall asleep because you have to go tomorrow for another 12 hours shift. And the problem when you get paid minimum wage, you cannot escape. It's not you. It's really hard to escape this loop, because especially in places like New York, life here is very expensive, and you keep working just to sustain yourself without any development. And so I think we, as a whole system, whole economical system, whole cultural system, we have all these resources to give it to the people, so people can be free from doing something what they don't want to do, and so the people can think about their lives, what they want to do, what they don't want to do, who they are, what's going on around. So and I become very pro UBI person, like almost aggressively pro UBI person. Yes, a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues who I work with, they don't choose this work because they like it. They just need to pay their bills, and they need to pay for their living. And this is terrible when the people cannot do what they choose to do. So I think it's I very support Andrew Yang with his campaign for the UBI. I think $1,000 is not enough, but it's something. It's a good point to start. And yes, I think it's important to focus not on a financial metrics, but on a humanity metrics. More like we should value ourselves more than our productivity.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points. So one, you know, the GDP metric is obsolete and becoming more obsolete every day. Two, that UBI is important for long-term thinking, medium-term thinking, and the thing I would add to that is that's very good. The thing I would add to that is whether you consume mainstream media, alternative media, or other. When you get home from rolling croissants after a 12-hour day, you consume media that is attention-grabbing media. It's people who have a lot of resources that are very mobile and know what they're doing. And all they do is they yell at you that you're stupid. So you get this reinforcement. So they say, you're stupid because you don't know what's going on in America. And that means you're stupid. And they go, well, that's my news for today. I'm stupid. And then you go back. So your short-term thinking becomes no thinking, and it becomes almost right back to survival strategy as opposed to even short-term planning. It's how do I get through the week? And I can say that because I know that because I look at most Americans don't have $1,000 in the bank. They don't have $1,000 in the bank. If you want to, and that's a reflection of the times.
Yes, and they said, oh, you don't make enough money because you're stupid. But you don't make enough money because you don't have access to all the education, and most importantly, you don't have access to the time you can spend on the educate yourself, so you can then start a business get a job, well-paid job. And it's most important the time. We need I think we have enough like online or whatever educational resources. We don't really need the college. I don't believe it. We really need the college, at least doctors need, but in most cases we don't. At least for retraining. And what we need is time free from scarcity, time free from fear of financial security. Time free from the thinking, oh, how I can pay the rent tomorrow.
And it's interesting because if you look at what a lot of Americans and or Western people and or others are investing their time in, a lot of it is escapism. So a lot of it is virtual reality. A lot of it is video games. A lot of it is there's huge amounts of money spent on pot, alcohol, tobacco, other things like that. So you get this short-term thinking. You get this reinforcement that you're stupid. You have survivalism, so you end up spending and investing your time not in long-term processes like that. Like these entrepreneurs say, "Oh, you just gotta study really hard and do it." When you have no time to study hard, because you're rolling croissants all day, and you have no, so you end up investing your time in escapism, which doesn't help anything at all. But that's all you have the mental energy for at the end of the day. You just want to escape.
Exactly. And all the system push you, and you in the stress, and all the energy you spend just to resolve the stress. And that's it.
Yeah. And so you end up with an unhealthy society, and that's what you're saying. You want a more healthy, longer term, medium term thinking society, and you need time to do that. You need reflection. So that's really good. So UBI is something really good. So thank you so much.
Of course, I'm happy to. I'm a big fan of your show. Like half last 2 weeks, I'm watching it almost every day because you publish so many videos with a connection to your some Communist Party. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
this
think
this party is a very important party for a global initiative, and you know, maybe people don't understand at the moment, but you know, in a few years they'll watch these videos and they'll say, "Wow, these people were the movers and shakers of the future. We really missed something by not watching this show." But you know, so you know, I think it's important for me to continue this work, and I think it's important that everybody continues to do their part. We can all do our part, and you know,
exactly. And I'm happy to be part of this party. Before I never considered myself as a political or some political person or being even close to politics. But this party, I think it could be a foundation for forming the community of transhumanists and very inclusive community of transhumanists. The party welcome everyone from not only in the US, party welcome to anyone from anywhere.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, and it's because Gennady, because it's a good idea, because it's about making network effects, because people are already going to live their lives and do their own things, whether you're a scientist or you're a broadcaster or you're a finance person or you're an engineer or you're a mum or you're a dad or whatever. People are going to continue in their role and continue to do what they can do, but a party is a professional rallying point for an idea, for a movement, and it's somewhere you can invest your time in order to, you know, change minds, and that's what it's about. And I think that's more important than you know, sometimes than the science. You know, just writing another book that goes into the void. It doesn't achieve anything except for maybe reinforcing some people who already understand the concepts and understand what it's all about anyway. That doesn't really achieve much in an interconnected global system where we may have a very short amount of time to get these out. Because if the internet went off tomorrow, the internet shuts down tomorrow, hypothetically, and it's all over, I still have my information, you still have your information, and that party has changed minds all over the world, and we can autonomously start developing systems. You know, and that's amazing, and you're not going to get that from another book.
Exactly. I think it's important what we're doing in a party. We try to breach the walls of tribalism. We try to be as inclusive as possible. We try not to form like just transhumanist tribe and all the rest it's others. So we should be all we, and we should consider all the sentient beings, not only humans but also animals and in the future AI, which I hope is gonna be sentient and nice to us. And it depends on us how we're gonna develop it, because we create this media and entertainment create this image of AI as a necessarily destructive force which gonna kill us all, like in Terminator or something. But I think it's just a projection of our fear of ourselves, and we should work with AI together. We should treat AI as our friend, as our neighbor, or we should consider developing AI as we grow in the child, so we can install some values which we value to the core system of AI. So when an AI become a powerful, it would operate based on the values we install it. So yeah, I think it's great, important job to include everyone who agree to join. And yes, if internet is broke down, we will keep in mind that there's people from our family all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really lovely to hear. And by we, I think you mean I think you're trying to say that humans need to grow up. They need to, in order if you want to survive the coming era, regardless of whether you like this country or hate this country or you want to launch nukes at this country, we're gonna have to grow up because we're all facing a common foe. If you want to make it into a foe and you don't grow up, you're going to be overwhelmed by this AI. So grow up, feed it good intentions, and you know what, we can end up having a better, prosperous future. But if you want Terminator, continue down a reckless path.
Yes, if you want Terminator, it's very easy to arrange. You don't really need a strong AI to organize some apocalypses. We were very close several times to arrange it by ourselves without any AIs. So it's very easy to organize. Yes, I think we need to grow up. We need to grow up from our, for example, national tribes. When I look at the debates of not the transhumanist debates, but debates in, like, for example, Democratic Party, I was just sad to hear that when their rhetoric, they limited by the borders of US. I'm very sad to hear that. Yes, we need to grow beyond the whatever borders we have, whatever walls we have, national walls, corporate walls, our interest tribe walls, our ideological walls. We have to grow beyond that.
Profit walls. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Profit walls, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, thanks very much for coming on Detonation. I'll have you on again at some point, and we can go over advances within the party and what you think of certain things. I don't know if you want to comment on candidates. I mean, that's a conversation we could definitely have. We're going to have a really big third debate, so hopefully we can get you in around that time as well, and we can talk about candidates or whatever you want to talk about with that. I mean, you are the secretary, so I'm sure you would have some information, but I'll let you catch up on the candidates because there's so many candidates.
Yes, and it's great. It's great when we have diversity. When we have only 3 candidates, I thought, oh no, it's not going to be fun. It's just the 3, and Democrats have 18. And now there's so many candidates, and I look forward for the next debates, and I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm still trying to do all the candidate profiles. I've got another 2 or 3 to go yet, so that's going to be fun. I look forward to that. I have 1 or 2 next week, so that'll be really good. And they're all very different. I mean, I can't criticize or whatever. I just, they're so different. I mean, there's so many good ideas. There's so many different personalities. They're all coming at it from completely different.
And this is the beauty of it.
Yeah, like you said, diversity. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, and I'm looking forward to seeing the other one. But this is great. And so I'm having a lot of fun doing the candidate profiles and seeing what they have to offer. And it's just so much fun. But it's also very important work. So it's not just fun; it's very important work. But so and all that
should be fun, even if it's important.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for being a fan of the show too. That's encouraging to. And now I feel stressed because now I have such great minds. I mean, I was stressed before, but now I know how much great minds analyzing my words and my presentation. So I'll have to step up my game somehow. But yeah.
Right, I'm always happy to see your show, and I'm so happy to be on your show. So,
all right.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
All right, thank you very much, Pavel, Ilin, Detonation. Keep watching Detonation. All more coming to you all this week. Thank you, Pavel, Ilin.
Thank you.